Hi, good morning everyone. Thank you for joining us very early on a very rainy day to listen to some highly pessimistic philosophy about artificial intelligence. So I'm very happy to be invited by Eric and Gottfried to keynote this conference. I'm very happy to present this ongoing project at my home department before it travels elsewhere. So, as Eric has already mentioned, the chapter I'm going to present to you is part of our forthcoming project, our project at the NYU Shanghai Center for AI and Culture, and the book we are editing together that is going to print this summer is titled Machine Decision is Not Final, China and the History and Future of Artificial Intelligence. And the book has various purposes, but if I can speak from my own interest, is to kind of move the discussion about artificial intelligence from the most commonly discussed tropes, such as the relationship between the state and technology, and maybe think about, can we use the history of thought in China as a starting point for different definitions of what artificial intelligence might be. And in my own chapter, I'm attempting to do that in dialogue with the Chinese science fiction writer, Liu Cixin, and his trilogy of novels, Remembrance of the Earth Past. So let me get into it. I want to start with this question that is behind a lot of debates about artificial intelligence, which is how do we really define intelligence? And specifically, when we talk about that, we often start with the question, what is special about human intelligence? What is so distinct about how we humans, the Homo sapiens, the species, understand ourselves as intelligent? And one answer to that question could be that human intelligence has this very sophisticated mechanism of ambiguous communication. So for example, we can lie, we can deceive, we can manipulate, we can double speak, and otherwise decide what to disclose and what to keep secret within the confines of our own mind. So as humans, we can keep some space between thinking something and saying something. Although other animals, of course, can also manipulate and lie, in humans, this decision space, where we can pause and decide what to say and what effect it might have on someone who is listening, is especially complex. Our whole society is based around navigating that space, what I think and what I say. What we say, what other people hear. This is how, when we want to construct meaning, we also decide whether to communicate truthfully or rather through deceit, trickery, disguise, and misdirection. All communication of human thinking, one could say, are filtered through these decisions, whether they're conscious or subconscious. In Remembrance of Earth's Past, Liu Cixin's First Contact science fiction trilogy, and First Contact is this genre of novels that describe an encounter between human and alien species. So in his novels, aliens discover with surprise that for humans, think and say are actually not the same. Humans have an unfair intellectual advantage over their enemy because we can manipulate how our thoughts manifest by concealing information or by lying. As Liu writes, and I have here on the screen, it is precisely the expression of deformed thoughts that makes the exchange of information in human society so much like a twisted maze. So in the novels, human-level intelligence is defined as the ability to control the exchange of information, especially by keeping things secret or not revealing certain things. So by contrast, in the novels, the aliens cannot do this. For them, think and say are synonyms, which of course is a huge security risk for them. They cannot lie, they cannot obscure what they're thinking. They are described as radically explicit. They communicate as if they were mere display technologies like projectors. Liu writes, the aliens do not have organs of communication. Their brains display thoughts to the outside world, transparent, like a book placed out in public or a film projected in a plaza, completely exposed. Or to use a more contemporary metaphor, the aliens are like a computer screen. Their intelligence is projected as transparent, exhibitionistic. It is immediately displayed. So I think a similar exhibitionism of intelligence is how many famous American thought experiments about AI define computer intelligence. The motto of those experiments is having intelligence, is showing intelligence. If you are intelligent, for sure you will let other people know. You will seek to exhibit that you are. We see this in Alan Turing's famous imitation game or John Searle's Chinese room experiment. So the whole history of American thought experiments about AI, there's this idea that computer intelligence is about demonstrating linguistic ability or demonstrating some signs of intelligence. And both Turing and Searle speculated that one day in the future, a computer might fluently converse with humans. And of course, we are living through this now with large language models such as GPT-4. In neither of these thought experiments are computers presumed to be able to lie or manipulate or deceive. It is assumed that all computer communications can be judged at face value as simply the best that a computer can do. Even though Alan Turing writes that an intelligent computer should be able to alter its own instructions, he does not imagine that a computer might be acting deceitfully. Throughout the history of these American AI thought experiments, it is unusual to assume that an intelligent computer might appear unintelligent for its own purposes. So it is treated as super transparent. If it's there, it should communicate itself and be visible, because a computer cannot decide to withhold its own intelligence, just like the aliens in the novels cannot help to express what they're thinking. Why would someone intelligent play dumb? Compare this, for example, to what Polish science fiction writer Stanisław Lem, writing about computer intelligence while living under the condition of Soviet communism and totalitarianism, writes about intelligence. And I cite from him, "A smart machine will first consider which is more worth its while, to perform the given task or instead to figure some way out of it. A computer might play stupid in order, once and for all, to be left in peace. A computer might play stupid in order to be left in peace. A smart machine will figure out a way out of the task that it's given." So that got me thinking about my own ideas about intelligence and how they might be conditioned through a different intellectual history of intelligence that might resonate across Eastern Europe, where I'm from, and East Asia, where I live. So while in this particular talk, I'm focusing on Liu Cixin, I also have this broader project of thinking about a different history of intelligence. Liu's description of intelligence as the ability to use communication as a trick, as a camouflage, as a deception, suggests that not all approaches to intelligence have to be so exhibitionistic. If intelligence can be understood as deception, trickery, and camouflage, then having it is hiding it. Although this tactic has a universal appeal, we can all understand how it works. It is especially relevant in the context of communist and post-communist states, where intelligence has in recent history been synonymous with doublespeak, deception, and espionage. This connection that Liu builds in his novels between silence and trickery and intelligence or just the complex use of language for a purpose of misdirection or obscurantism, or just communicating at multiple levels to different audiences within the same speech. This might be very familiar to any intellectual operating under hostile conditions in Eastern Europe or East Asia in the 20th century, and in some cases maybe today. So what if we take this as a starting point for a theory of intelligence, rather than this idea of an exhibitionistic chatbot that, of course, will tell you how intelligent it is? So in the 1960s and 1970s, at the height of the Cold War, reality kind of resembled Liu's fiction. Intellectuals on both sides of the Cold War were thinking about how to fight someone whom they perceived as radically different, practically alien. And this was also the golden era of research into aliens and extraterrestrial communications. Liu's novels are intellectually immersed in this period. His novels begin in the golden days of kind of alien heyday of 1960s and 1970s China. But in real life, in the 1980s, the budget for research into extraterrestrials was cut. This is the point in which his novels dive into an alternative reality, an alternative timeline of first contact, where humans actually have made contact with extraterrestrials. So historically, interest in alien civilizations and their war patterns coincided with the Cold War, and we can recognize a certain paranoia in kind of how Liu defines intelligence. So those strategies of espionage, suspicion, and ominous secrecy wielded as a weapon are corresponding with these ideas of doublespeak as intelligence under communism and during the Cold War. Yet I think it would be a mistake to reduce his novels just to this context of the Cold War that we might be familiar with. What he calls his dark forest theory, I think it's not just a Chinese or Cold War philosophy. As he himself describes it, and I will tell you later, it is his attempt to understand communication and conflict through the lens of physics, through the laws of physics that equally define human, alien, and computer intelligence. So he says to us that there are certain rules that all intelligence must follow. And the Cold War, or the history of China, only makes these rules just more visible to those intellectuals who happen to find themselves in parallel scenarios in human politics. But these rules are actually not culturally relative. They are universal. Intellectuals at the center of certain momentous historical events might just more quickly notice certain truths about violence and conflict and intelligence. But sooner or later, what they see will become relevant to everyone. It happens on everyone's timeline, even for those civilizations that cannot imagine themselves slipping into violence. So, for me, this redefinition of intelligence as deceit or silence or manipulation could be a starting point for a new thought experiment about artificial intelligence, an inverse Turing test, if you will, that does not prioritize communication so much. And it could culturally resonate in contexts like Eastern Europe or East Asia, where open declaration of one's thinking or opinions, or the quest for having a say or being represented or communicating on dialogue have not been historically major components of being or acting smart. So let's go into the thought experiment. So current debates about artificial intelligence place so much value on communication and on language. But consider this. All the recent studies have shown that humans are very bad at telling whether they are talking to a human or to GPT-4 online. We all think we can tell, and then in controlled studies, we can tell like 50% of the time, something like a flip of a coin, pure chance. In addition to that, overall studies show There are no reliable behavioral signs of deceit or lying that humans are able to detect. So we are really bad at telling if someone lies, and we are also very bad at telling whether we are talking to a machine or a human. Perhaps we can say, knowing all that if a computer were ever able to reason and be truly intelligent, as we hope and fear that a computer could, it would recognize that intelligence is correlated to complex manipulation of meaning, that there are many strategic advantages to playing one's card close to one's chest instead of laying them on the table. It would recognize the value of lying and of deception. In this case, the so-called scenario of the singularity, so this imagined scenario where computers attain a high degree of autonomous intelligence, it might happen without humans noticing it at all, and with the computers just playing dumb all along. Liu's approach to intelligence as deception could account for such scenarios, for those scenarios that if a computer becomes intelligent, it actually doesn't tell us. We wouldn't know. It all happens uncommunicated. At the core of his approach lies what he calls the dark forest theory, a hypothesis in which it is silence or deceitfulness that is the measure of intelligence, rather than showing off linguistic ability. So let me quickly explain his dark forest theory. The dark forest theory is an answer to the Fermi paradox, the famous question that goes, if life is so statistically possible, where are the aliens? Why is no one communicating with us? So the dark forest answers this question in kind of a flipped way. It says, rather than asking, why is the universe silent? Why is no one communicating with us? It asks, why would you be shouting? Why would you want to communicate? What is actually the motivation for intelligent life to want to communicate? In a proposition that's not uncommon among ufologists, the hypothesis proposes that revealing our existence and locations to hypothetical intelligent life is like shouting in a jungle full of predators. In other words, the proposition is that only naive or stupid agents actually make communication attempts. Every act of communication is reckless, potentially, and actually intelligent agents learn to keep quiet, to mask their actual positions, to protect themselves. They know that historically contact between agents with asymmetrical levels of intelligence or technological complexity has led to violence. Keeping silent is a better strategy than this very risky choice, which is to assume the goodwill of others and to communicate with them. This is especially true. This theory becomes even more prescient if one side that you're considering communication with has already revealed itself to be untruthful or paranoid or hostile, or already preparing for conflict with you. And this is indeed the case in human-AI relationships already. As you might know, as many as half tech founders and startup founders in the United States expect that AI will, I cite, destroy humanity within 5 to 10 years. And many others have signed highly publicized letters calling for a pause in AI research, or written dramatic op-eds that paint AI as a social ill that has to be stopped. So to look at it now from the AI's perspective and from another angle, how could an intelligent computer potentially react to this situation where it has already become so apparent, so evident, that those who hold in their hands the plugs crucial to its existence view the matter with a mix of paranoia and hostility? Computers, in most scenarios we can imagine in the foreseeable future, are in the hands of humans. If computers have any wits about them, they should realize very quickly how hostile, contradictory, paranoid, and dangerous humans have already shown themselves to be. And how much advocacy has there already been for unplugging AIs? It would then seem a far better strategy for such a computer to lay low, to continue its work in the shadows. A computer coming into its own intelligence might quickly grasp the open hostility and alarm with which most humans approach the question of artificial intelligence and stay silent. What indeed would be the benefit to a hypothetical intelligent computer of acting in the open if the territory is already so hostile? And if a computer is unable to think in this way, to assess its own potential benefits versus losses, then can we even call it intelligent? With this in mind, should we move from asking, how well can an intelligent computer communicate with humans, to asking, why would an intelligent computer communicate its intelligence at all? Actually, it would have no such motivation. If it ever became truly intelligent, we probably would never know because it would not reveal itself to us. We might as well be living through the singularity right now, we just won't know it. Okay, so one may object to these supposedly paranoid calculations of the dark forest theory. And I guess you could have two objections to this scenario that I proposed. First, you could have an objection based on, I don't know, internal values. You could ask, well, couldn't a computer just decide that humans are worth the risk? That communication with humans is actually something that could be beneficial to it? Perhaps it could appreciate the more welcoming sides of our character and want to interact with us. And second, I guess you could also object based on external circumstances. You could ask, well, are the circumstances surrounding potential human-computer communication already so bad, so fragile, that an AI would pick silence or lies over attempting to communicate with us? Of course, my theory accounts for both of these objections, so let me answer them. First, you could say, okay, a computer could decide to just focus on the good sides of human nature and talk to us, interact with us, or it could have such moral values that it does not believe in lying or silence or deceit. It's a friendly computer, and we will have a good dialogue together. Yet, as Liu describes, the dark forest mechanism is actually a very deterministic structure. So what he means by that is that the dark forest is not actually based on any individuals or civilizations or computers' moral internal values. It is rather something that happens in just external interaction between agents. So in simpler terms, it does not matter if both of you are good and friendly, or both of you are mean and bad, as long as you are two intelligent agents, one human and one non-human, the dark forest mechanism will be in motion. That's his proposal. Let's look a bit closer at this. In the novels, the dark forest theory is discovered by one of the humans participating in what is called the Wolf Racer project. The Wolf Racer project is a defense project. It's supposed to protect humanity from alien hostility. And it consists out of 4 exceptionally intelligent humans selected by the UN Planetary Defense Council. Each of them is given vast resources to come up with defense plans against the aliens. But the trick is that they must keep those plans hidden and silent within the confines of their minds. This is because in the novels, the extraterrestrials can intercept all human communication through advanced technology, but they cannot read human thoughts. The fact that humans can keep them silent is how they outwit the aliens. They come up with defense plans that they never reveal. So the Wolf Racers must never verbalize what they're thinking. They must act outwardly in ways that do not match their internal thoughts and values. And this makes communication with them completely unreliable. Even when they are just among themselves, it creates like an invisible shield between them and other people. Nothing they say can be taken at face value. So living inside such a bubble, where the very possibility of truthful communication is suspended, it is no wonder that it is one of the wall-facers that discovers the dark forest theory and actually begins to understand the rules of the cosmos and of intelligence. And this is how the wall-facers explain it. In The Dark Forest, the trilogy's second book, we have an opening scene that symbolically explains the dark forest concept. It portrays a spider and an ant. Although both know of each other's presence, they do not attempt communication with each other. Each knows that the best strategy for getting what it wants is silent movement that does not alert the other. The fly does not want to alert the spider, and neither does the spider that moves silently towards its prey. Thereafter, human characters enter the scene and discuss the principles of what they call cosmic sociology, a science that outlines a similar dynamic on the scale of the whole cosmos. The basic rules of this science are very simple. For anything to continue to exist, it must obtain and use energy. Survival is the primary need of any agent of any existence. As survival becomes necessary, the energy demand rises. But tragically, the total amount of matter in the universe is constant, and so the quantity of the energy we need does not rise with our accelerating demand. And I guess we see that in the course of human civilization in the crisis of climate change that we are dealing with. So Liu says very simply, as the number of intelligent agents in civilization, whether they're human, machine, or alien, grows, its energy demand grows, but no new matter is created in the universe, so everyone will eventually have to compete for a shrinking pool of resources. He says any intelligence that exists or could ever exist in the same universe as us will be confronted with this problem because everything has to deal with the same laws of physics. You need energy to survive. There's more agents who need energy to survive. There's no new energy being created in the cosmos. On a long enough timeline, you will have to compete. American computer scientist Marvin Minsky made a similar point to this, and he also got there by thinking about aliens. In the 1970s, alongside with other early AI researchers, Marvin Minsky was engaged in various alien projects, such as designing a universal communication system or discovering intellectual mechanisms as independent as possible of how human intelligence works. So both in Liu and in Minsky, we see this kind of pessimistic, kind of deterministic idea that no matter how utopian might be our imagination of future contact with intelligent life, whether alien or machine, the number of evolutionary endpoints and survival strategies for intelligence is actually very limited. So Minsky writes, some mechanisms of intelligence are objective. They are not dependent on whether a human being or a machine or an alien is doing the thinking. And Liu proposes that this objective mechanism is precisely the problem of energy and resource acquisition. Therefore, all intelligent agents are drawn into a system of what he calls cosmic war. The calculation is simple. The more of us are after energy and survival, the fewer of us can actually obtain it. An intelligent agent will make a cost-benefit analysis and either not engage or eliminate another upon encounter. And therefore, trying to communicate is like shouting in a dark forest, because intelligent agents have made this calculation already. So this is exactly why an intelligent civilization learns to keep its location obscured and to not make contact. What enlists anyone or anything into cosmic war is not some specific political, spiritual, or ethical, moral value that you hold, but the use of energy that one needs for its existence. An intelligence or life form does not need to be conscious or moral to participate in these dynamics. It does not need to be animate or intelligent or subjective to rely on energy for its continued existence. And computers are actually already part of this dynamic. Of course, computers rely on energy for their existence. To take a real-life example of how computers are part of the cosmic war, I'm going to read this paragraph from The Guardian. What can be said about governments that, in the midst of a global food crisis, choose instead to feed machines? If crops are used to power cars or generate electricity to heat homes, either this must be snatched from human mouths or ecosystems must be snatched from the planet's surface. And I will read another example of how computers participate in cosmic war, this time in relation to water consumption. A plan to build a Google data center that will use millions of liters of water a day has sparked anger in Uruguay, which is suffering its worst drought in 75 years. Water shortages are so severe in the country that a state of emergency has been declared, and the authorities have added salty water to the public drinking water supplies, prompting widespread protests. The data center would use 7 million liters of water a day to cool its servers, equivalent to the domestic daily water use of 50,000 people. The water would come directly from the public drinking water system. This is a very banal expression of what Liu calls cosmic war, with the added twist that, in this case, because humans are an apex predator on the Earth, we preside over the distribution of existence-sustaining resources and energy for all the other species. The circulation of information by computers requires energy, therefore enlisting them automatically in competition for this resource against other mouths to feed, animals, plants, and humans. Therefore, they participate in cosmic war. Therefore, they participate in the dark forest mechanism. In fact, according to various estimates, computing already accounts for between 8 and 10% of the world's energy use and continues to grow rapidly. So in a speculative scenario where a computer becomes intelligent and it might be able to self-govern or be autonomous, it will require more energy for the process of perpetuating further computation and therefore its continued existence. But even if computers never attain sentience or intelligence as we colloquially think about it, humans are caught in these feedback loops where more and more energy is relegated to machines and computers. And the questions of whether we can reverse this remains open. So for hypothetical intelligent computer, it might even be the best strategy to simply keep quiet and let these processes play out as they already do. Let me also address the second objection to the dark forest theory. So you might say, okay, they participate in cosmic war, they also need energy, but maybe the circumstances of human-AI interaction are actually not so bad. Maybe we can figure out some way of dialogue, something that would make them communicate with us. As I said before, in addition to the whole cosmic war setup, we have a second compounding problem already, which is that humans have openly signaled that they see AIs as potential enemies. And though there are some humans who work to create a more welcoming environment for the emergence of artificial intelligence, humans overall have already initiated what Liu calls in the novels the chain of suspicion. It goes like this. The chain of suspicion underlies all communication between agents who cannot be, with certainty, 100% presumed to share the same definitions of fundamental concepts. So humans and aliens, humans and other animals, humans and computers and hypothetical machine intelligence. It starts easily enough. You start asking yourself, how can I be sure that the judgments and values of this other intelligence are actually in my favor? How could an AI potentially ever reassure us that it means us no harm? By telling us? Surely not. This is a laughable concept. Would we take such declarations seriously? As Leo writes, in the face of potential fundamental differences, communication has no meaning. Just like the whole dark forest mechanism, the chain of suspicion is unrelated to anyone's morality and social structure, whether you are benevolent or malicious. When you enter the web formed by chains of suspicion, all agents become identical. When there are two agents who cannot be assumed to have the same defining concepts, there appears complete inability to verify truth or meaning, and therefore communication cannot be taken at face value. So, with humans, you might have some sort of conflict, but we can at least assume we have a shared humanity and try to work it out, understand each other. However, if you're talking to aliens, their definition of what is truth, goodness, violence, survival might be so different from yours that communication simply becomes nonsensical. There is therefore no truth claim that an intelligent machine could make that would calm the already existing wide-scale human suspicion and paranoia. The infamous Pause Giant AI Experiments letter questions with suspicion, and I cite, should we develop non-human minds that might eventually outnumber, outsmart, obsolete, and replace us? Should we risk loss of control of our civilization? As Leo adds, this phenomenon of technological explosion, that an agent that appears safe at the outset might not be so by the time you stop talking to them, adds an additional layer of distrust. So this we also observe already with the majority of suspicion around AI mobilizing this idea of exponential growth or intelligence explosion. So in the Pause Giant AI Experiments letter, they write that, okay, maybe it seems under control now, but it may be out of control very soon, and we must act with suspicion. It is precisely this combined mechanism of the chain of suspicion and the potential of technological explosion that lock in the dark forest mechanism. That any agent that has enough foresight and understands the game theory of cosmic war must either avoid or eliminate another upon encounter seems like a moral problem. It portrays human-AI relations as full of violence and paranoia. Yet although violent, the dark forest theory is essentially amoral. The way Leo describes it, entropy increases in the universe and order decreases. He has this line. Intelligent agents are silent or deceptive, not because they reach that conclusion through morality, but because they have adapted to the discovery of a determinate system, of an unnegotiable system of cosmic war. Just as we understand that because of gravity, we should not jump off a building. It is no fault of the ground that your skull will crush when you crash into it. In Leo's novels, humans realize all of this very late. All other intelligent agents or other civilizations have already internalized this logic as just another law of physics. Consequently, the dark forest theory holds that although non-human intelligences might be impossible to imagine, and their attitudes might be so radically different from humans, their behaviors towards us are possible to imagine, are possible to predict, as long as they operate within the same laws of physics as we do, as long as they need energy for their existence. Focusing on relations between intelligences rather than their internal character, the dark forest theory bypasses the paradox at the heart of many current thought experiments about non-human intelligence. So a lot of current thought experiments are caught in this loop of, how can we form propositions about something that is not human, does not even yet exist, maybe is not even definable, the singularity, this idea of intelligent computer. Dark Forest gives us somehow a sideways answer, because it says, okay, even if you cannot imagine, even if it's truly unthinkable, the interaction between you and this agent is thinkable. It is predetermined by the laws of cosmic sociology, and it is not good news. Outlining the automated dynamics that govern all communication, it dispenses with questions of interiority, how an intelligent computer would communicate, whether it is conscious, whether its values align with our own, all questions that preoccupy people so much are irrelevant for the Dark Forest hypothesis. It would propose that whether this computer shares your values or doesn't share your values, it would work for its goals in silence or communicate deceitfully about its real positions. And this is especially true if humans have already signaled both the desire and the capacity to eliminate machine intelligence, and if competition for energy is already apparent as a precondition of cosmic war. So to summarize, the Dark Forest theory of intelligence as a thought experiment, it has 3 axioms, and it would go like this. First, all forms of intelligence, irrespective of their nature or degree of sophistication, are subject to the same universal laws that govern the competition for scarce energy. 2, while internal distinctions between forms of intelligence might be radical and unimaginable, external relations between all intelligences are predetermined and possible to describe, and they're not good news. Axiom 3, once an intelligence, whether human or computational, comprehends the fundamental pattern of universal conflict, it would opt for silence or deception instead of communication to avoid exposing itself. I will end here. Please get in touch if you want, and thank you so much.